Hello everyone and welcome to your Game Week 2 Injury and Lineups live stream. Now as always, before we get into it, we have to say we're going to go through this alphabetically. We do have to get done by 3 on the dot today, so we'll be going through the teams fairly quickly. But as always as well, before we move on to starting with Bournemouth, how are you doing today, Ben?
Yeah, mate, Friday deadlines are always manic and we revert to type. We've had double figures in terms of press conferences between 1 o'clock and 2. So for anybody viewing the stream for the first time, the caveat, as always, this is a working document. There are updates still to be added, so nothing is set in stone. I will obviously get round to updating all of the team news, injury updates, player availability once I come off this stream.
Yeah, it's it's ever changing, and always, after the live stream as well, things could change too. People could get injured in, training, warm-ups, whatever. It's not kind of set in stone, and this is why we also say stay tuned to Ben's Twitter feed. He'll answer your questions as well on there. Obviously it's very busy, and also after we'll try and answer questions on the video as well, so you can put them in the comments below. And as always, before we start, I'd just like to say do check out the Premier Injuries channel. Somebody said there's a caveat. That's one of your favourite sayings, Ben, just like Sean Dyche and what's it called, Touch and Go.
Yeah.
This is the Premier Injuries website. We update this very quickly when there is injury news, so you can check it out there, team by team, like we'll be going through today as well. And afternoon to everybody. Lots of good mornings, good afternoons. Yeah. So we're going to move it on to the latest injury news. And actually, just before we start, Jandre says, I'm a terrible person. I'm at a funeral and watching FPL content. I think, I think that's probably one of the best markers of how good our content is, that people, even when seeing the deceased, they want to see us as well. But yeah, Jandre, I hope, you're smiling and laughing there. I hope it's not too bad of a day being at a funeral, and best wishes to you and your family, and that you seem to be taking a positive of the situation there. But let's go to AFC Bournemouth then. What's the latest there, Ben?
Yeah, absolute respect to that, by the way, before we kick things off. So we have heard from Areola ahead of this weekend's trip to Anfield. One potential returner. There was several, maybe 50-50 calls heading up to the game. But the only realistic hope of a returner is for the skipper, that's Lloyd Kelly. That was a muscle problem, kept him out of the opener, but he has had 3 to 4 sessions underneath his belt this week. Will he come into the team? Well, if fit enough, and I think he probably there or thereabouts. There's 2 options, whether he can come in at left back, or he may sit in the centre defence and sit alongside Marco Senesi.
There you go. So moving from Bournemouth to Arsenal, and obviously huge injury blow for the team. Jurriën Timber ruled out for a very extensive time due to that ACL injury. But yeah, is it any more information that people should be aware of with the Gunners?
Generally, they had a behind closed door game this week. There was some minutes in the legs there for Reece Nelson, got 90 minutes, and also Zinchenko was able to get some minutes in his leg as well. So that's a bonus. He rejoined the group this week in training. However, behind closed doors game in Premier League matches, there's a little bit of a gulf there in terms of where you need to be with regards to your fitness. So we expect him to be a little bit short in that regard, could possibly make the match day squad. So that probably opens up that left back spot for Takahiro Tomiyasu. Although Mikel Arteta did go as far as to say that Kieran Tierney wasn't completely out of the equation. But like I say, Tomiyasu is probably just ahead of him. Elsewhere within the team, there was a little bit of a surprise at right back last weekend. Mikel Arteta said that was a tactical decision. There had been, of course, talk in the build-up to that match at the weekend against Nottingham Forest that Gabriel may be dropped to the bench. We weren't sure if that was a tactical or injury-related. He did insist it was a tactical switch, and that meant Ben White was pushed centrally. I do have Gabriel back in the heart of that defence, with Ben White moving to that right back spot because of that injury to Timber. But elsewhere in the team, it probably picks itself. We had spoke about, would Leandro Trossard get that leading, central role in the side? We thought he might, but it wasn't. It was Eddie Nketiah, and of course he delivered with a goal, so we expect him to retain his place.
And with the situation there at Arsenal, you said that Arteta's hand's almost been forced by the Timber injury, but because of maybe the way that Arteta started the season there, it was a tactical choice not having Gabriel. Do you think that maybe makes some of their centre-backs, not pickable now, or even anybody in their back line? Is it going to be like the rest of the team? It's going to be rotation. I mean, the only one that I'm kind of settled with is Saka. I mean, the others, maybe not so.
I mean, maybe Saliba would be the call if you did want to dip into that Arsenal backline. But, with uncertainties, is there uncertainties around Aaron Ramsdale? Potentially, Mikel Arteta said there are no number ones within the team. Everybody's competing and vying for a place in that starting lineup. So with a little bit of uncertainty, you're going to respond either one of two ways. You're going to lift your levels, and you're really going to push, the envelope from where you've been in. I'm not a big fan of Ramsdale. I don't buy into this, that he's a top-class goalkeeper. I think he carries too many clangers, and I think on the floor he's questionable, susceptible, and that's why maybe they've took the opportunity to bring in David Raya. So there's good competition there. And yeah, while there's uncertain, I don't really get why you would be dropping Thomas Partey, and then maybe the interest or supposed interest from the Middle East with regards to Gabriel maybe unsettled him a little bit. So that's one to watch. But yeah, I'm pretty much with you. Saka, I mean, Martinelli was great as well last week. And of course, given the way that I picked my FPL team, Nketiah was one of the few players that I could opt for. So I'm hoping for an extended run from Eddie Nketiah in my Benjamin Dinnery 15.
Yeah, it's a work of genius, that one. So we do have a question before we move on to next team. Slavcho has asked a great one. He said, do you think all these serious injuries across Europe's top leagues might be a result from the World Cup in December? I mean, is that true, Ben, first and foremost? Is there an increase in injuries?
Well, we had a similar question, and it related specifically to ACL injuries, and I think the question was pitched in the same way. Why are we seeing this higher number of ACL injuries? And one of the, somebody said related to COVID and so on and so forth. I think the reality of this situation is, and I cannot really comment massively across Europe. Obviously, the main focus of my work is Premier League. We're not seeing an increase in reality. In fact, we've seen a downturn in ACL injuries over the last couple of years. And yes, we've had that small sort of glut of injuries with Emi Buendia, Tyrone Mings, and now also Timber. That's three in the opening weeks. But look, football is a contact sport. If you look at those injuries and how they occurred, I mean, the Tyrone Mings one, yes, it was a coming together with Alexander Isak, but it was that deacceleration, it was that valgus knee bent in, and it was a horrific injury, likely to keep him out for the rest of the season. But, these things do happen and are part and parcel of the game. So, I don't necessarily subscribe to anything like that. Like I say, I can't really comment too much about across Europe. You need to look at those injuries, in isolation, to see, how they came about, look at that mechanism, and then, you maybe be able to draw better conclusions from that. But, Tyrone Mings wasn't involved in the World Cup, and like I say, it was just one of those unfortunate things.
I think as well, from the data that you drew from the Premier Injuries database, you showed that actually ACL injuries happen more often at the start of season. So it might seem like, oh, there's a lot at the start of this particular season, but actually it usually happens in the August time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think around about 70% of all ACL injuries logged on the database happen within this month. And that's when players are getting reacclimated to playing, the intensity levels of playing again in the Premier League. How many times have we banged the drum? You can't replicate on the training pitch or in non-competitive friendlies and games, quite that level of intensity. So one of the biggest risk factors with regards to ACL injuries is neuromuscular and fatigue. So you'll factor in a lot of those things during those first few game weeks where players are adapting, and that's why we see this spike. So like I say, just somewhere between a fifth and a sixth of all ACL injuries tend to happen during those opening 3 to 4 game weeks.
So let's move to Aston Villa, the team there that we've been talking about in terms of Tyrone Mings. How are they going to adapt without him in the team?
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks to a like-for-like swap as we've seen at St James's Park, and not the desired result that Villa fans would have wanted, but Torres will come straight in. It was a difficult decision last week on how we would see Torres getting shoehorned in to that starting 11, but with Moreno absent and Lucadinha was the one that we thought was vying. We did go with Torres, but Dina got the nod. So Torres will come in on the left-hand side next to Konza. Also, slight concerns over Leon Bailey, although the Unai Emery press conference should be in and around now. If he's out, then I see McGinn maybe being pushed out to that left-hand side and Yuri Tielemans maybe given his first competitive start.
And we do have a question about the likelihood of an Aston Villa clean sheet this game week. It's a 42% chance of a clean sheet for the team there. They're looking good against an Everton team that have an inability to score at times. They had one of the highest XGs of last weekend, but they don't have a goal scorer. Neil Maupay is at 28, 29 games without a goal. Calvert-Lewin is still returning from his hugely lengthy time out. That there's nobody there really that they can rely upon. So Villa do look good. We'll just see if they can not repeat the performance of your magnificent Magpies of last weekend. Brentford up next. They looked good without Ivan Toney. They seem to adapt. I don't know if that's whether because Tottenham really played into their style as well, but they seem to manage all right. This game week, any kind of positive or negative news?
Again, waiting to hear from Thomas Frank, so that will be updates that we'll add immediately after the stream. 2 question marks really with regards to from last weekend. We've seen the Matthias Jensen forced off. So he was questionable, big doubts there. Frank Onyeka failed a late fitness test last time out. So I'm just working on the assumption for the moment that Onyeka has progressed this week and done okay, and Jensen hasn't. So that's a bit of a like-for-like swap. Also, big questions with regards to Ben Mee. That was a calf problem that kept him out last weekend. Christoph Ayer was who got the nod against Tottenham. If Ben Mee fails that late test, then it will be Ayer that comes in. Otherwise, it's pretty much as you were for the Bees. Not a bad start for them. Impressed, certainly going forward. So, yeah, don't see too many changes from Thomas Frank.
And just as we scroll to the next team, what I was going to say was please do remember to subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out content. We're going to be adding some things as well. I'm going to start doing a data analysis video each game week. Obviously, Ben has got his injury updates. And of course, you don't want to miss out on these Friday live streams as well. But also, please do give a like to the video. That really, really boosts us in the algorithm, gets us out there, and share the video as well to friends and even those that you're competing against in your leagues. But let's turn our attentions to Brighton, another team that started the season very, very well. What is the latest there with the Seagulls, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, there had been some suggestion, or certainly I was getting a lot of questions with regards to rumours and Pervis Estupinen. There you go, Jay. and whether he had picked up an injury. Well, certainly according to Roberto De Zerbi, that is not the case. He effectively give his squad a clean bill of health. Couple of, give context around that. Tariq Lamptey isn't 100% in terms of his match fitness. He's going to play for the under-21s against Chelsea on Friday night. I have brought Adam Webster back into that Brighton defence. That would mean that Van Heck moves out. Now, this right-back spot, I do have James Milner starting there, but Joel Veltman would be another option as well for Roberto De Zerbi. But like I say, the rest of the team, given that performance on the opening weekend, should more or less pick itself. A lot of interest in Evan Ferguson last season. De Zerbi again referenced him in his press conference. He's one of those players. I think he's been put forward as a young player of the year. He's impressed, but he does say that he's still got a lot to learn, as you would expect. But Danny Welbeck's been fantastic in recent games for the Seagulls.
Yes, indeed. We've got a question about Salah. We will get to Liverpool a little bit later. But Marius, in terms of Brighton, has said, could we see Lallana instead of Pedro, maybe Pedro up front? Shake of the head there, Ben. Do you not see any chance?
Certainly not after last weekend's performance, and also Lallana's coming off the back of injury, hasn't had a lot of minutes in pre-season. So yeah, he's one of the ones. In theory, he is available, but I certainly wouldn't expect a start from the veteran midfielder. Maybe more of a bit part role.
Moving to the Clarets, Burnley. Any updates there quickly, Ben?
No game for the Clarets. They were due to play Luton, so we can bypass those.
There you go.
For now. There you go, mate.
Wonderful. Chelsea up next. The Blues.
I have Reece James on there. That is out. He's gone. We have heard from Mauricio Pochettino. Initially played down that injury, hamstring related issue. I say that forced him off last weekend as fatigue. Stories then began to emerge on Thursday that he was sent for a scan. It looks like it's going to be weeks, maybe, in the manager's words. Now, that's a concern because Reece James is already coming off the back of a heavily disrupted pre-season. He had an injury towards the back end of last season, and even these small problems can easily turn into big problems. So, we've spoke about it over the last 4 seasons. We're talking about a player now that is a 1-in-2 player, a 50% availability record over 4 seasons. That's only going one way at the moment, which is down. Yes, he's been given the armband, he's got the captaincy, but he wouldn't be coming anywhere near my fantasy team.
Yeah, this is something that you and I talked about extensively through the build up to the season. You've written about it, you've talked about it many, many times. It's just not worth the risk. You want your players to start. Our budgets are very tight this year because obviously Haaland costs so much, Salah costs so much, Harry Kane costs so much. There's a few really. Oh, sorry, Harry Kane's not in the game anymore. Salah and Haaland cost a lot, and there's obviously a lot of kind of other assets that we want in our team as well. So risking it on a player that is perennially injured, as you said, their 50% availability rate, you don't want to roll the dice on it. In terms of it, then. Is Chilwell a better risk, Ben, or are you still a little bit worried because of his injury record as well?
Look, there are concerns there. If you look at 2 of the major red flags for injuries, you look at history. What does the history tell us? The history tells us that, Chilwell over the last 12 to 18 months has had a pretty difficult time. And then they're also working their way back to full fitness and fatigue at beginning, at the start of the season. So that is a little bit worrisome. If you were to go between the 2, then yes, look, he would be my choice. Absolutely. Look, I would take a punt on Chilwell if you wanted to go in that Chelsea backline. And then, of course, you go there with your eyes wide open. It's a risk you take, but, that's why you have free transfers.
It is indeed. We've got FPL Rubber Ducky. He is quite happy that Chukwuemeka is playing. Is that kind of a certainty there?
It's never a certainty, given the strength and depth of the squads these days, there could be some slight movements in and around, as Pochettino still gets a handle on that starting 11. But I thought Chelsea done quite well against Liverpool. Moses Caicedo, is a consideration, but like I say, I think it's probably just a little bit too early for him, and that might change things around a little bit. With maybe Enzo being pushed a little bit further forward. But keep your eyes out on this Chelsea team, because, like I say, there are potentially one or two changes that I will look to make with this one. I'm toying, and I'm just waiting to hear back from one or two people with regards to little bits of news.
I think the thing with Chelsea is almost they're almost in that bracket now of like Arsenal, Manchester City. It's not a settled 11 at the moment. They're going to be finding their feet. I think as the season progresses, we'll probably see a better 11 emerge. But at the moment, Madueke could come on instead of Sterling. Sterling could play there, and Chukwuemeka could come off. There's a lot of talent in that team there. We know how much they have spent, which is a fair old bit. And then just one last question. Mark has asked, Caicedo isn't registered in time. Is that correct, Ben?
No, Caicedo's been with the club now for a few days. So he's already trained with the club. So in terms of registering, that isn't a problem. In fact, clubs have until midday. I think the day before fixtures start. Now, I'm not sure if that relates to when the actual schedule starts, which would have been Thursday lunchtime, or when Chelsea's actual game was, which means that Chelsea would have until midday today. But Caicedo has been in the building now and training with the group. So again, I don't think that's a concern.
So why is he not in the team then? People are asking.
Yeah, so I mean, look, he hasn't had a lot of training over the last few weeks, whether with Brighton or with Chelsea. There was talk of a minor hamstring issue that made him miss the Seagulls last pre-season friendly. And it's not just about bringing players in and throwing them straight in there. There's a period where you look to integrate them with the group. You understand the philosophies, the style of play. Even Mauricio Pochettino spoke about Romeo Lavia and Moses Caicedo about how, this time has been very stressful for the pair of them, medicals and this, that, and the other. So, that's why we don't have Moses Caicedo straight in that starting lineup. Pochettino said that, if they're fit and available, they could be included in the squad. But if we think they're not, then, we wait. There's no rush. There's no need to throw them in there unnecessarily. And like I say, off the back of a half-decent performance against Liverpool, then no need to take too many chances.
We do have one last question on Chelsea. Colwill, a regular starter then, Ben?
I think absolutely, given his form, excelled at Brighton, sort of really come to the fore. That was his breakout campaign. He was getting noticed. He's attracted a lot of interest. Liverpool were heavily linked. Look, if he carries on playing the way that he's playing, he's going to be turning into a phenomenal asset for the Blues. And I can only see him growing in stature with the club, particularly alongside Thiago Silva. He's going to learn so much. I think this is a big season for Colwill, and I expect him to be one of the first names on Pochettino's team sheets.
Yeah, very exciting talent there. Now, Crystal Palace up next. They look good in the first game week. Edouard had, I think it was the third or fourth highest XG of any player for game week 1. And then Eze had a really high XGI as well, just showing his involvement there. He might be the new kind of talisman for the team. But what is the team news there? Is there any positives, any negatives?
I mean, that depends on how you want to take that, but I suppose no news is good news. So no real updates from the treatment room. The Palace squad will be exactly the same as it was last weekend, barring any late injuries or overnight illnesses. Therefore, I expect the Eagles to be unchanged. Obviously, the big news coming from the Palace camp was the signing of Michael Olise on a new 4-year deal. Chelsea was sniffing around the young Frenchman, but like I say, he's put pen to paper. He's still some way off returning to the squad, given that hamstring problem that he suffered for the under-21s in the summer, but it's a major coup for the Eagles.
Yes, it is indeed. Keeping a talent like that shows, I guess, the intent of the club that they really do want to grow and push those European positions. Mohammed has asked, what about Gabriel and Trossard? We have been through them already with Arsenal. So if you wind back to the start of the video, as always, we're going through these alphabetically, and we're going to get on to John Stones in a little bit. Everton, as we said there at the start of the kind of video, they had an high XG. They didn't put their opportunities away. Disappointing. But what is the kind of latest there?
Yeah, the big news, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is pushing for a start. He's in contention. Arsenal weren't the only team to have a behind closed doors game this week. Liverpool had a friendly as well. Everton had a friendly, if you could call a case, against Liverpool. So as part of that, Calvert-Lewin played 90 minutes. So that's really sort of thrust him in contention. And Sean Dyche will be looking at last weekend's game and thinking, where the goal's going to come from. Do we roll the dice and go with Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Quite possibly, like I say, this is a one that we may update. I think Neil Maupay's had around 26, 27 shots on target without a goal for Everton. So, confidence is down, and, Everton need points on the board. So maybe it's a time to take that gamble. They've certainly protected him over the pre-season program. Did attend a clinic out in Germany, doing some work on his own. So hopefully we see a Dominic Calvert-Lewin return to that Everton starting 11, and more importantly, stay in the side.
And with the analysis here, Samir has brought up a great point that I was kind of alluding to as well. He went for Pickford over Leno this week. Leno got the clean sheet, but expected goals conceded were higher for Fulham. I think this could be, hopefully this happens, because I've got Pickford in my team as well, that, Sean Dyche goes back to type. Low kind of goals conceded. Usually the goalkeepers of these teams that he's in charge of play very, very well. We saw Pickford, played out of his skin last season. The defensive work might be what saves Everton, and that's where Sean Dyche builds upon. So, the data obviously there is one game week, but maybe Dyche has worked with them over the close season and they might be tighter at the back. But, obviously Sammy there has mentioned Leno. We're going to move on to Fulham now. Is it confirmed that Mitrovic has moved now? Because that's a massive blow, really, to the Cottagers.
I think there's interest from Saudi. That's without question. Marco Silva referenced that, had his head turned. Initially, it didn't meet the valuation. I think we're around about, was it 28.5 million? Or sorry, 25.5 million. In Al Hilal, Al Hilal, I think that's who it is. Recently signed Neymar, and they're very confident that they would bring Mitrovic to the club. I think Fulham are pushing closer to 40 million. So that hasn't been met. However, in terms of availability, I'll let the rumour mill do its own business. Mitrovic is actually out of this weekend's game because of injury. Genuine, look, that's for you to decide. What I would say was, following his introduction last weekend, there were big question marks whether Mitrovic could continue just moments after his injury because of that ankle problem. So look, the issue is genuine. It was real. If you want to believe that it's not that injury that's keeping him out of this weekend and it's potentially a move away, then look, I'll let you make. Yeah, we're all big boys and girls in FPL, so yeah. That's why we expect. I've got Raul Jimenez expected to lead the Fulham front line once again. Heavily linked with Florian Balogun from Arsenal, potentially on loan, maybe. Adama Traore has joined the club as well. He'll be linking up with his former Wolves teammate. And there's also Carlos Vinicius, who is another option in attack. But Marco Silva doesn't appear to be too struck on the forward at this moment.
Interesting indeed. And usually we don't like to cover rumour, but obviously that is linked possibly to availability issues at the club. Nils has asked, Mbeumo against Fulham or João Pedro against Wolves, Ben? Who would you choose?
Do you know what? I was really impressed with Wolves at Old Trafford. Whether that was more indicative of how Wolves played under Gary O'Neill, or whether it was more Eric Ten Hag and his United team being very disappointing. So I'll go with the former. Like I say, judgment's out on Wolves. I'm prepared to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt at this moment in time and see how things go. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves got 3 points this weekend and really kickstart their season if Monday night was anything to go by.
Yeah, this is the thing is I think Gary O'Neill is actually a shrewd signing. He showed real quality in management Bournemouth last season. I thought it was ridiculous that they sacked him. I thought he should have got the job full time. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. I am a little bit worried as a João Pedro owner because of that fact. And, we'll see against Mbeumo. I'm not too settled on his finishing ability. I prefer Visa in the Brentford team, but obviously he's a forward and it's hard to kind of fit him in, Pedro in, and lots of others. Liverpool are up next, though. And Ben, this is another headache team, isn't it? But you've kind of gone with a settled team, even though they really struggled defensively at times against Chelsea last season. McAllister didn't look like a natural kind of central defensive midfielder at all.
Yeah, again, this is a little bit of a difficult one. When teams are playing, once a week, as they are, as it stands, that gives managers the opportunity to work on things on the training ground. And Jurgen Klopp will have looked at, analysed that game against Chelsea and picked up on bits that they weren't so happy with. And hopefully they will have addressed, over the last sort of 3 or 4 days. Look, there's a lot of big names on the bench in that Liverpool squad, particularly in attacking areas. Darwin Núñez is another option that you can thrust in there. You could even look at Curtis Jones, who was excellent since returning from injury towards the back end of last season. That could push Gakpo up. Diaz is a player that I'm hoping will start. He's my letter D player with De Bruyne, being sidelined. So I did bring Diaz in. But the worry, as we always talk about, is minutes being shared amongst those forward players within that Liverpool team. Defensively, that back four surely got to pick itself. Who really comes in to there? There's nobody that is challenging, making a serious, challenge to pushing for a start. Joel Matip, or Canate, that's a non-starter. Van Dijk, captain, and then Trent and Robbo. So that's why we went with that solid back four.
Yeah. In terms of it, who asked it? GV asked, will Trent come good and Hall this game week? He was very average last game week. I mean, this is part of the reason why I don't have Trent at the moment, is because I'm still not settled on Liverpool being a quality defence. I can't remember, but they were one of the top sides for big chances conceded last game week. I think they conceded 5 off the top of my head. I could be wrong, so if I am, please don't come at me. But overall, the defensive data wasn't great. It wasn't great last season. And I think the problem is until they get a proper defensive midfielder, McAllister's great, but he works better as a pivot or somebody alongside him so that he can make those progressive runs, the progressive passing. He's not a defensive mid at all. He's not that kind of player. And in terms of it, he's predicted to do well this game week at home against Bournemouth. 44% chance of a clean sheet, so that could be there in terms of that output. 33% chance of an assist. Overall 65% chance of a return. He's predicted to do well. You just don't know with Liverpool sometimes. We do have questions about why is Darwin not playing more and maybe Jota off the bench. What do you think, Ben? Just tactical reasons?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, whatever's happening on the training pitches or whatever philosophies or tactics that he wants to implement, he probably feels that Diogo Jota is better fitted or better suited to that system. Look, I'll go through those, pre-match press conference notes again, and there's a I do like Darwin Núñez. I know that he's underperformed his XG massively. I think it was last season, but I'm always of the mind that, it's particularly with forwards and strikers, The time to really worry is when they're not getting those opportunities, and he's a threat. He can run in behind. He's powerful. And let's not forget, again, they've got that little period of adaptation. It's a new environment. It's a new team, and that's something that just isn't going to happen overnight. So again, with a solid preseason under his belt, he could have a big season. He still have a big part to play, Darwin Núñez. Let's not forget we're only one game in.
Right, so we come on to Manchester City, and just a little reminder again, we've got a lot of viewers this week. Please do hit that like button, because it really does help us out. But Manchester City news, so many questions about Diaz, Stones. Somebody has asked, will Haaland have restricted minutes? Samir has said it after the Super Cup midweek. And obviously, how does De Bruyne's injury kind of affect the lineup as well? There's a lot of talking points here with the citizens.
Yeah, and this is definitely one that would be amended, updated, if you want to put your big spoiler and yellow flag alert, Jason. But look, so Bernardo is out. We know he missed the Super Cup. Now, that was a little bit of a niggle and some illness post-Turf Moor. So he's definitely out of the game. Hopeful to be back next week. John Stones included in a Super Cup squad. He pulled up late in training on Thursday. That's a hamstring problem. He's out. I have included Ruben Diaz. Missed game week 1 because of a concussion. Protocols kept him out. He should be there or thereabouts. Didn't play in the Super Cup game, but like I say, is available for Pep if needed. Also, there was a slight doubt with regards to Julian Alvarez. That's why he didn't play many minutes in that Super Cup. Cole Palmer got the nod, and of course, he got the goal. But Julian Alvarez was a player that Pep said is going to play a vitally important role for the side this season. I do have Alvarez in, and I probably will, leave him in there. We should, we may be looking at Jack Grealish switching across to the left flank, and then Foden maybe on the right, and leaving Alvarez in there. Kovacic comes in and sits in that 4-2-3-1 as opposed to maybe a 4-3-3 with Kevin De Bruyne. But there is a little bit of fluidity in there, in and around that team as well. I have Guardiola starting at a left back as well. That would be ahead of Rico Lewis, as he did in the Super Cup. You could maybe argue that is Nathan Ake a question mark. I started the last 2 games. He's coming off the back of a hamstring injury. We know what his history's like. So Pep Guardiola, potentially could look to protect the player from starting 3 games in a week. However, I have opted for him. Akanji is the player that's missing out. Laporte heavily linked with a move away, although the latest reports suggest that he may have declined that move to the Saudi Pro League.
Indeed. So let's move on from the citizens onto their massive rivals, the Red Devils, Manchester United. And what is the latest there?
Yeah, Martinez forced off half-time on Monday night. People were speculating whether it was that yellow card. I think it was a challenge on Pedro Neto, maybe. Grass is green, sky is blue. Martinez picks up a yellow card. However, post-match revealed that it was actually an ankle problem, or he said ankle, but it related to a tendon. But he rejoined the group in training on Thursday, so he's absolutely fine. Elsewhere within the team, not expecting many changes. Jadon Sancho is one that could come in to freshen up what was pretty a lackluster United attack.
Yeah, indeed. Watching that game, they couldn't really defend or attack. I don't really know what they were doing, but that's quite comforting, I guess, to a lot of people in the FPL community. Fernandes and Rashford are very, very highly owned, and maybe they can do better this game week, because last game week it looked like they couldn't score, and they were so lucky with the Varane situation, and also not to get a penalty. Newcastle are up next, and I think, obviously there's a little bit of bias here. I obviously have a soft spot for them as you're my boss and my good friend, but they look really good. And obviously the way that they ended last season doesn't always mean that they're going to continue that into next season. But I think sometimes it is a good indicator to kind of almost see when the rot starts with some teams, or, the glow up starts with some others. And Newcastle were fantastic. They kind of got back that form that they had in the pre-World Cup period. Injuries, disruptions, all that. You can understand why the post-World Cup period initially was not great. And then they finished with an absolute flurry, and they looked so good and finished in a Champions League spot. Isaac was great. Gordon was fantastic. And then Harvey Barnes came on. He had a barnstormer of a game. This team looks great. Really organised. They all believe in how. They're all, believing in the project. I think in game weeks to come, they got Man City this week. I don't see Liverpool as much of a bad game because there could be lots and lots of goals. But yeah, what is the injury news there with the team? And do you think that maybe Newcastle are a bit overlooked?
Team news first. We're pretty much as we were. 3 players in the treatment room. No fresh injury concerns. Nobody due back. So Eddie Howe should more or less have the same squad as last weekend. The selection headache comes from the performances of Callum Wilson and Harvey Barnes from the bench, as you alluded to before. Eddie Howe even talked about, how difficult it was to drop Callum Wilson. I think he's going to have another tough decision, and I think he could probably name an unchanged 11. This is the period where Newcastle really need to capitalise on just playing once a week. Once those European fixtures come along, we're going to see a lot more rotation and a lot more changes within the team. I think for the early part of the campaign, I think Newcastle are a great bet, but a trip to the Etihad against the current champions, realistically, could a hand on heart saying we're going to go there and get a 3 points.
Yes. Up the tune.
I will take a point any day of the week. It's a good time to play City. They're obviously missing some key players. They still haven't hit, the ground running. I think we'll give them a good go. And like I say, I think we'll get on the score sheet. And if it's entertaining, we showed last season at the 3-3 draw. It's St James's Park where we should have had 3 points. Look, there's nothing to be feared. And if Tonali can, replicate that performance of the opening weekend, Pep Guardiola was eulogizing over Newcastle. He said we're a great team, and any team that makes the Champions League deserves to be there. He thinks that we're going to be there for years to come. He thinks big things are happening on Townside, and it's hard not to agree with him.
There you go. I mean, I'll just say to you, Hawiya man, how can you not say that the Toon are going to win?
The realist or the pessimist, and and Manchester City aren't just one of the best teams in the Premier League and in Europe. They are, up there with the best teams in the world. And on any given day, if they were to put in a performance, then, you'd be very, very lucky to live with them.
I mean, did you like my little Hawaii man as well?
It's a C-, Jason.
Okay, continuing. Nottingham Forest. I don't think much interest in their aspects, but any news there?
There is an Awomni for me. He isn't 100% fit. Obviously made an impact from the bench at Arsenal. Steve Cooper said that he wasn't quite ready to start. I'm sick of taking Steve Cooper on his word. This went on from last season, and even last weekend said that he wouldn't be included in the squad, and then comes out and he says, well, we decided to take a risk. So that's why I'm starting Awomni. That changes things slightly. That would mean Mangala coming out of midfield, potentially, because I don't see him dropping Danilo. But if you don't fancy that, Johnson and Gibbs White up front with Mangala sitting alongside Yates and Awomni from the bench.
Another team, Sheffield United. I don't think there's too much interest apart from I've seen a couple of questions on Baldock because he's a 4.0 defender. Is that correct? But he's ruled out now, isn't he?
No. There were slight concerns over. Slight concerns, but they were cleared.
Apologies.
More of fatigue, a little bit of cramp. So he's fine. So available and expected to start.
There you go. Listen to Ben, not me. I mean, I think a lot of people learned last week not to trust leaks and team news and things like that in terms of teams and whatnot. Just to always stick to the press conferences and and the news rather than rumour and misinformation. Tottenham up next. What is the latest with Spurs? There is kind of a big team news thing, but I'll explain that in a second. Ben, you go ahead first.
Yeah, one change to be made here. I did put Davinson Sanchez in. That was basically because Christian Romero had to go through concussion protocols. So it was a bit of a judgment call ahead of the official confirmation, but Postecoglou confirms that he has been cleared by the medical department. Therefore, the Argentine is in contention. And for me, he will start ahead of Davinson Sanchez. Everybody elsewhere, as far as I know, up to this point, is fit and available, so not expecting too many changes, despite an okay performance in the opener.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is with Tottenham is they've announced, I forget who the reporter is with The Athletic, Alistair Gold, fantastic reporter, check out his stuff if you've got any questions about Tottenham, but he explained that Gianni Vio has been let go of by the club or left by mutual consent, but basically he's not at the club anymore. And Tottenham were one of the best sides at set pieces last season. That was one of, the only positives of last season. And now he's gone. You do ask the question, will there be a sudden downturn in their set piece goals? That slightly removes some of the zeal off Maddison, on top of the fact that Kane's gone. But obviously, it's weird because you've got Maddison, who's one of the best set-piece takers in the Premier League. You'd want a set-piece coach to fully capitalise on it because his ball deliveries are going to be fantastic. So we'll kind of see with that. West Ham up next, though, Ben. We've got to really shoot through because you need to shoot off. You're a busy, busy man indeed.
Yeah, David Moyes, clean bill of health. Whether they're going to include any of their new signings remains to be seen. I would suggest, as I've indicated here, that James Ward-Prowse is the most likely. He has Premier League quality. He has experienced, life in the top flight before. So that transition isn't as great for him. And he's a player that could certainly, I've expected him to slip into that team, seamlessly. A great player. And, you touched upon set pieces and dead balls before. Well, he's your man if you're looking for some kind of outlet and bonus point magnet. James Ward-Prowse. Heard it here first.
Yeah, I love the shout of James Ward-Prowse. Again, West Ham, one of the best teams at set pieces. We've always kind of seen them. That's one of the hallmarks of David Moyes' play style. We're moving on to Wolves here, but just as we end up as well, thank you so much for all the people joining us. I think that's a record number of views today. Could we have a record number of likes? Please do hit that. Do hit the subscribe button so that you stay in touch with us. And of course, share the video as well. It really, really helps us out. Obviously, the more views, the more likes, the more that we get helps us produce better content. We can invest a little bit more because, with time and things like that. So Wolves up next. And then we've got a couple of final questions. Ben, what is the latest?
Yeah, Gary O'Neill was speaking as we came live on air, not expecting any major updates in terms of team news. I think Wolves could be unchanged. Their, treatment room was clear post sort of Old Trafford. They're really impressed. I tell you who stood out for me, as well as Matheus Nunes and Kuna, who I thought both had great games, was Pedro Neto. He looked like the player that we expected to see on his return from injury last season. Probably needed that good summer program under his belt to get and recapture those fitness levels and that little bit of sharpness in the game. And I thought he's a threat. And he's one, again, that is on my radar, being a letter N type player.
So we've been asked our captains. Please put it in the comments below yours. Ben, you played the game very differently, but do you have maybe a differential captaincy pick? Because, it's obviously Haaland people are going for, or Salah. Is there somebody else that's outstanding for you?
Well, of course, I cannot go down that route. So really, Haaland is well out of the equation. And in terms of attacking assets, I am actually limited as well, really. Alvarez, obviously against Newcastle, I wouldn't, plus the doubts. And Isak as well as my other striker. And Ketia, one. look, I think it comes down to maybe, do I take a punt on Richarlison? I'm looking at my team now, and I'm trying to pick, is there anybody in that team? Do you know what? I did like Diaby for Villa against Newcastle. I thought he offered a little bit of threat. Let's not get too carried away with that result. It's St James's Park. We played really well, but Villa did have that little spell after that sort of first 10 minutes, came back into it. Look, I'm not ruling out the possibility of captaining Diaby.
So my captaincy last week was Salah. I was very peeved that one of his goals got ruled out. Very questionable on that. And also I think he should have had a penalty as well. But, it doesn't stop me captaining him this week because he's keeping the captaincy armband for me. I don't know if there's any big differentials apart from maybe... a lot of people are saying my Salah captaincy didn't work out. It's all right. We move. I enjoy the game to play it my own way as well, Ben, like you. I just wanted to take a bit of a risky punt. Why not? It's good fun. But I guess the only one that is probably... I don't know the captaincy poll data, but Rashford might be quite good against Tottenham because I feel that Tottenham were really wide open. I'm not sure if Postecoglou ball is for them at the moment because of the personnel that they have. And Samir says he's going in Burmo captain. I mean, why not? This is our channel is a differential channel. We don't go with the flow. We are differential Dinnery, apostles, and so we go with that. As for it, we're going to wish you the best of luck. Have a fantastic game week. Please do hit the like, do hit the subscribe button, do join in and be with us next week because we'll be here at the same time next week and all through the week as well to answer your questions. And make sure to check out my video that will come live next week as well. We're trying a new form of kind of preview and, build up to game week 3. So thank you very much.